Welcome to the second Lanbrew podcast. I'm Sean Tyler, and I'm here with
Nikhil.
Mr. Nikhil. And we're doing something special today.
Mm-hmm.
In light of Halloween, we decided to watch the Blair Witch Project.
Yeah. The original Blair Witch Project.
Right. We said we were going to watch A New Hope, but it's a holiday, it's Halloween, we watched a scary movie.
Yeah, it felt appropriate.
Why not?
Yeah, it was on our minds, and we thought that we can watch Star Wars next week, but
Right.
we should just embrace the spooky spirit of the weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, also, another point, since we're doing a franchise series,
This technically does fit into the franchise theme.
how many movies does it have?
I think it has 3 movies.
3 movies, which I had no clue. I knew that they came out with a new one this year.
This year.
But I had no idea about Blair Witch 2.
Book of Shadows. I think it came out. I think it came out like a couple months after. It was like a year. It was like
Okay.
2000 sometime. So
Oh, that was 2000.
2000.
Well, so the original Blair Witch was released in 95?
No. It was July 1999.
That was 99.
Yeah.
What? The movie says October of 1994 is when it was filmed,
When it happened.
quote
Okay.
unquote.
Well, I mean, I was reading that they had planned this since like '93, the filmmakers,
Oh, okay.
which is crazy, that it was in production that long.
Okay.
But I guess that this must have been filmed in '98 because they had they had 8 months of post on this, and then
That is the number, 8 months of post?
eight
Okay.
8 days of filming and then 8 months of post.
Oh, that was only 8 days of filming.
8 days.
Huh.
Yeah, and the production process is really interesting. Just kind of like, how like what the filmmakers realized that like how they the process by which they got this story and these performances is really interesting. Because it involved like walkie-talkies and GPS and sort of improv and surprise. And I think that contributes a lot to the movie. So. I guess kind of like that'll be kind of an interesting point, thinking about what makes this film different than like the sequels.
Yeah.
Like what
Or what makes the sequels different from
this one.
this
Yeah.
one?
So yeah, I mean, should we just get into it?
Yeah. So we actually have some guidance this time
Yeah.
instead of our initial jump into the Force Awakens. But so our first question that we're going to ask ourselves about this, and I think it's the most obvious question, is does it hold up? And let's also make the point though that like 1999, for anybody who's not a film buff, that was like a magic year.
Magic year.
For film. That was like the gold standard year for
Yeah.
film, for modern film, I think.
Yeah.
Like the end of the 20th century, and just this blowout of just incredible movies like Fight Club, right? Blair Witch,
Fight Club, Blair Witch, Three Kings, Magnolia.
Yeah. Oh man, awesome movies. Matrix, yeah. Incredible year for film.
Yeah, Being John Malkovich, Office Space.
Was Office Space?
Office Space.
Maybe so, yeah.
There's a lot of shit.
Anyway, a lot of good stuff came out in '99. So when we say does it hold up, I think we're comparing it to our standards for filmmaking today, and
Does it work?
does it work? Does it work as a horror film?
Does it work? Does it work as a movie? Does it work as just like do they tell a story, and does it? Yeah. Do we? Are we still engaged with it? One thing is like the memory that we had when all this shit came out, and like that's just like kind of like on a bit of a tangent. It's kind of like maybe just getting older, or maybe just like 2016, and everything that's happening. But it's like trying to remember what life was like before the internet and before cell phones and smartphones and kind of like having all this content. But like 99 was like definitely, like we were talking about before, like the end of the 20th century, and then all these movies coming out, and so this kind of being like, it was like kind of like the last heyday of analog, right?
Yeah.
And just everything that was happening, and how, I mean, I guess this film technically was like maybe one of the first viral films to kind of take off, because the way that it utilized internet marketing. I
Right.
think this was the first film to kind of really take advantage of it.
Of internet marketing?
Of not internet marketing, but
The concept of internet
the
marketing.
concept, like having a viral campaign with a website.
Okay, yeah.
And you go to it and like find out and like, is this true? Is this not true? Like, what's happening?
Right. Well, we were talking about how
It was a grapevine movie.
yeah, and so I remember hearing my parents talk about, and so we should also say we were 13, 12, 13.
12, yeah, 13.
Yeah. And so I remember my parents talking about how, oh yeah, there were these 3 college kids who they were talking about it like on the news today, and everyone's like curious whether or not it was real or not, because when the movie first came out, there was this question of, is this real? Did this really happen, or did these kids really get lost?
I think I remember there was like a sci-fi channel. I wish we looked for it, but there was like a sci-fi channel, like maybe documentary, like also Sixth Sense. That came out in '99 too, and I feel like that also it was kind of more, ridiculous because I feel it was about M. Night Shyamalan, but there was like a half-hour documentary that came out in conjunction with Sixth Sense that was about M. Night Shyamalan that he like was totally bullshit, but it was like he fell down in a well or something when he was 8 and died and then came back to life, and this is why he's like
Is that the
seriously, yeah. And so it was this whole mythology about him, but I think there may have also been. I feel like I remembered that there was a Blair Witch tie-in on Sci-Fi Channel that was like the story behind, like a fake documentary about this documentary.
okay.
About
the kids who were lost and that
and the police search and all that stuff.
Well, and so that was interesting. So we should also mention that we finished the movie and then we watched the trailers for the most recent, the second one, and then actually the first Blair Witch Project movie.
Yeah.
And I didn't bring it up when we were watching, but in that trailer,
right,
they show footage that they didn't show in the film about, and they have like a news blurbs of anchors saying the 3 college students who went missing in whatever, the Black Hills, and then they show footage of them finding the camera, putting it on a police car, and then putting the reels on the police car.
Really cool.
So the marketing for this was just, it set a standard, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I bet that there were, I think Artisan Entertainment bought the film at Sundance, and apparently that there were reshoots too. So I know that 8 days to film, 8 months in post, and I think that process was interesting because it was like, they shot on high 8 and 16 millimeter, and then edited maybe on something like videotape. I don't know how they edited, but then they transferred all that material to 35 millimeter. So they blew up high 8 footage and 16 on 35, and so we watched our this movie on Hulu streaming, and so that was a 16:9 aspect ratio. But I think that originally '99 in the theaters
it was 4:3.
It was 4:3. So like if you walked in, you were looking at a box like television.
Like it was actual.
It was actually
which added to the believability.
Which added to it, and I think, and so that's the kind of I saw this in theaters. So this is July '99, which makes sense because I remember it was like the middle of the day.
And you snuck in.
And I snuck in with 2 friends, and the movie had already started, and there was nobody in the theater, maybe like one dude, and I think that we, I remember that really vividly, like walking into the theater as it was already going, and kind of just being already kind of overwhelmed by this handheld footage, like massive handheld footage that I'd never really seen anything quite like it, like on a big screen, and being terrified.
And not being nauseated, because everyone was like throwing up in the theaters at that point.
No, I know
it. But just like the overwhelming, like this is where I'm watching something close. I think the closest thing you could compare it to at that time of like real handheld video footage on TV was like America's Funniest Home Videos, right?
Yeah, or Cops or something.
Or Cops, right? But even Cops, they were filming on nicer cameras than
broadcast cameras.
Yeah, than like a handheld video camera. I remember the same thing. My story is like the same thing, and I actually didn't stay for the whole thing. I snuck in with some friends, and we watched a little bit of it. I don't know if we were scared or we were scared of getting caught, but we left. But it was the same thing. I know exactly what you're talking about.
But that's also a good point that like that was part of the thrill of it, was that we like shouldn't be in the theater.
So let's get back to the question, and that's a good a good segue.
Yeah.
Words.
To
the question, does it hold up? Because So there are
I
a
mean,
couple.
like there's no way to ever compare, like I wish that I could have some sort of a erase button in my brain to like watch this movie for the first time, or as a 12-year-old in 1999, because that's probably the best way.
Well, so I was about to say, like, there's some movies that I just won't rewatch because when I saw them when I was younger, I loved them, and I don't want to rewatch them now and be
Yeah.
like, my
Yeah.
super critical like adult mind.
I feel like there are certain substances that help.
Bring you back down to the
No, totally.
12-year-old
No,
level.
totally.
Yeah.
Like I never saw Labyrinth
Oh, I've never
before,
seen that.
and I watched it with some help, and I was totally like, oh wow, this is like I felt like totally accepting and being like, wow, this is
Okay.
magical.
You had an open mind.
I was totally open, so I feel like that helped. But I would not want to do that with this movie.
So in one quote from the movie, Josh, the character Josh in the movie says, "Well, have you seen Deliverance?" I've actually never seen Deliverance,
I haven't either. No.
and well, we should
Should watch it.
that should be a part of.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not a franchise,
It's not a franchise.
but maybe someday down the road. But so does it hold up? I mean, my answer is absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely holds up. In fact, when people ask me, I don't like horror movies, and Halloween is the only time that I'll watch a horror movie. And last year we watched Annabelle.
Yeah.
Pretty sure it's Annabelle. The movie with the doll and the murderer cultist's soul goes into the doll, and like it's a haunted doll that
Yeah.
it's a true story, and the doll exists, and it's sitting in some like pawn shop or antique store somewhere. Scary movies, one, I think they're mostly boring most of the time, and then two,
Sure.
I absolutely 100% hate jump scares. I think they're lazy, and this movie is proof for me that they're lazy, and I just don't like being scared that way. I want to have a psychological thriller.
Yeah.
And when anybody asks me, "What's your favorite horror movie?" I always say Blair Witch Project. Always. Even though before this I'd watched it with my fiance maybe 2 years ago or a year and a half ago. And then before that, it'd been 7 years or something, maybe longer before I'd seen it. And so then fast forward to today, I love it every time I watch it. I'm transfixed. My belief is suspended 100% of the time. My focus never breaks. And the thing that really interests me about it, and then I'll turn the floor over to you, is that we're watching this home video, so to speak. However, it has a formula, and it has arches, and it has a beautiful climax at the end, and you're unaware the entire time. You're absolutely unaware
Of
the whole formula that's going on. You feel like when you watch a home video, there is no formula unfolding. I'm not following a script. And maybe that's what I'm getting at. I never at any point feel like when I watch the Blair Witch Project that I'm following a script, which makes it so much scarier.
Yeah.
It makes me feel like I'm actually watching these kids die.
I think that's the thing about the movie is that it's like, it just feels real, like, like watching this movie now, like just going, like, one dream would be, and there's probably a way to do it, but we'd have to be in New York or LA probably, is to see this movie on a print, because I feel like that would be the best way. That would be like magical, like seeing the footage blown up and seeing it that way, but it feels real.
It feels real because it feels like there's no script.
Yeah, it feels real, and so like like the production process is I think is just really interesting. So like just as far as like what I know about this movie is like that there was just a lot of planning that went into the movie. There was a crew, but all the filming and the audio, like the sound and picture came basically from our three leads on screen.
Right.
They're actually shooting it. They're actually shooting 16mm footage and high 8 footage and getting sound on the DAT recorder. That's what they're doing. And then there are crew members that are kind of like facilitating, like probably building like the stone sculptures and the wood sculptures, and making noises at night. So as far as the story goes, they had a outline of whatever the story was, and then they hired people that they knew would be good at improv, and that was it, you know. And then also they would, I guess the actors signed up for a little bit of psychological torture, you know, like because they would try to freak him out and surprise him and do shit to fuck with him and you know, deprive their make their food rations deplete every day.
I didn't know that.
So it was like all, and then I think that what we're watching is actually people getting mad at each other. People are actually like getting lost, like for real. It's just the three of them interacting, and so I feel like there is like a blur between what is happening in the story and what their actual personalities are. And I feel and I think that those are their real names. So I feel like it's like a crazy experiment that was perfectly designed in order to get this story across, where it's like they just knew that if they apparently got basically 20 hours of footage that they whittled down to 90
out
minutes.
of the 8 days.
Out of the 8 days.
They had 20 hours.
Yeah, and so I feel like that whole process is what made this movie what it is, especially compared to the sequels, which seem to take a different process, you know. But we can get back to that to the sequels in a bit. But I guess just I guess that's what makes this movie for me hold up, is that it just feels real, and like and it's scary, but also the horror. It also just feels sad, and you feel like nostalgic for the 90s,
right?
And you feel and you just feel like these are fucking real kids,
yeah,
that are like making mistakes and like hurting each other, and like that's also what's cool about the movie, is that like it's just as fascinating watching their relationship deteriorate and strengthen over the course of the film.
But do you think, and this actually goes into our next talking point, is what makes this movie scary?
Yeah.
And I totally agree. Do you think that they ever actually make up? I mean, do you ever think that, because the whole time I'm watching this time we watched it, I'm thinking, okay, there's no forgiveness happening, right? There's no, like, everyone has committed some sin, so to speak, except for Josh, right? Who?
No, but I mean, he has that thing at the when he's like has the camera on Heather.
Oh yeah,
like
yeah, that's right.
That scene's like totally fucked up, you know.
Yeah.
And like
you're still making movies, and he's trying to hurt her.
Yeah, and so everybody like
true
like has some kind of nadir where like
you're right.
They make a mistake, you know.
Yeah, but and of course they are. I mean, they're hungry, they're cold. They're lost. They have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
And they're getting just totally tortured in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So it's really the realness. It's why I go on Live Leak sometimes and I'll watch these unedited, gritty videos of life unfolding and the darkness and death that happens like all around us every day. Not that I go on there and like watch death videos or anything. In fact, I mean I avoid it, but
you avoid it, but like sometimes you come across that stuff and it is
it's a car wreck thing, right?
Yeah, you're just like, oh, like and it's scary because it's like it's not a movie. It's presented kind of in the most like plain way possible.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I guess this is what this looks like, and there's something kind of terrifying about I guess how normal something
you have these
terrifying can be.
Of course, you have these moments. Like let's say you're watching a car wreck video, and the title tells you like man gets thrown very far from car during this car wreck. You watch it, and when it happens, the video ends, and you sit there and you have a moment.
Yeah, but like, it doesn't look real. Like, no, I mean, it looks real, but it's kind of like I don't know if we're trained to.
We never get to see that stuff.
We don't see it.
And that's what the allure is. And I think that's what the allure is of this.
When you do see it, you're like, it's kind of hard to believe.
Because you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard to believe. And so while you're watching this, you're like, wow, okay, I guess this is what it looks like to get lost in the woods, tortured, and then be hunted until you're killed. Mm-hmm. So,
so that's the thing about like we're talking about franchises and stuff that I feel like that these filmmakers were interested in. Like, so like it feels like and this is a thought that I've had vaguely before, but it's like sometimes when like Star Wars or this movie, it's like sometimes when you do it for the first time, there are things that you were interested in that maybe gets lost uh, in other iterations, right? So we can talk about Star Wars next week, but like in that case, it's like what do they do in A New Hope that's cool that they don't do in Force Awakens? Like things that they're interested in, like let's like try to do this, like as far as like the filmmaking or the story or whatever. And here it's like it seemed like the filmmakers were really focused on trying to make it believable and like just what would happen if you were in that situation, versus like the sequels. And for the record, I have not seen Book of Shadows.
Has anybody?
Yeah. I don't think
I'd be very surprised if anybody listening to hey, maybe if you're listening to like a Blair Witch Project podcast, you've seen
Book of Shadows.
Book of Shadows.
I mean, we watched the trailer, and I really want to watch it now. Like,
it looks so bad.
It looks terrible.
But it looks like what they did is kind of, to talk about Star Wars, they did what George Lucas did around that same period. They were like, oh, you like this? Let's give you something you've... Even in the trailer, it's like, forget what you've seen. Forget what you've heard.
Which is crazy.
Why?
Yeah.
Why would you not build on the success of your formula you have from the first Blair Witch? And for those who don't know or who haven't watched it yet, the Book of Shadows trailer and movie is all... it's not just them in the woods lost with, 2 cameras and a DAT. It's full on like special effects and people in warehouses
it looks like the bottom barrel version of Scream or
like Chainsaw.
I Know
Texas
What You Did
Chainsaw.
Last Summer.
Okay.
Like all of those teen horror films from the 90s.
Yeah.
This is like the worst version of those movies, and it's about the Blair Witch, and it just seems like like a totally bizarre choice to like make. It's like, well, instead of doing anything that remotely made the first film special, let's go the opposite direction.
But it's about risk, right? It's like why these movies are great. A New Hope was a risk.
It was a risk,
right?
Yeah.
And
but it feels like this is like I don't know enough about Book of Shadows, but it feels like they were trying to avoid risk. I mean,
right.
I mean, maybe at the time it was kind of like, whoa, like that's like I do remember being slightly interested in that movie because I was like, it did seem kind of crazy that they were making like a real movie out of this fake documentary, but it definitely didn't look good. So I didn't bother to see it.
But you just said it right there, a real movie out of this fake documentary.
Yeah.
Which the fake documentary was the risk in the film world, which caught everybody off guard.
Yeah.
And really sparked something really interesting in the film community.
Yeah.
Whereas, doesn't it really seem like some bigwigs from like 20th Century Fox or something go down? And that's not who did it. I'm just saying, for conversation's sake, a bigwig, right? A dude in a suit comes down to them and says, "Hey, we're going to take your amateur thing that was a success
and
we're going to apply this nasty formula that's like really popular right now in the late 90s, early 2000s.
But I think that's it, because it's like the way that Eduardo and Daniel, the filmmakers, made the movie and thought about it and designed it, I think was so they had to invent a process to make this thing work. Figure out like how they're going to pull this off and do it. And I feel like that the whole thing was so alien towards the way movies were traditionally made back then that that like it's like they weren't. It wasn't even a consideration that like let's try to do that. Instead it was like let's just make Scream.
Yeah, right. Well, and so what's even close to this?
What do you mean?
Is Cloverfield the only other thing that still has this?
Well, yeah, I mean like
handycam.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
running gun.
I guess in like the mid 2000s, like found footage became a thing, and like we're still kind of in. I guess we're kind of at the tail end, it seems, of the found footage craze, But it's like Paranormal Activity started.
Okay.
And then
true.
Cloverfield was like probably like kind of early, probably in there, but it didn't take off until the Paranormal Activity stuff.
Yeah, really.
And then there's been like a bunch of stuff since then, but.
Which I liked Paranormal Activity. I like the first one a lot.
I haven't seen the first one.
Oh, you haven't?
But I've seen like 4 and 5 for some reason. So
I didn't even know there was a 4 and a 5.
well, yeah. I mean, like, I actually I find them kind of interesting. Really, only for like one. Like, there's jump scares and that stuff's always like gets you, but there's, I guess like the witchcraft element. There's like witchcraft in those movies.
Yeah, true.
Like in kind of this like kind of cult mythology or something, and that stuff is kind of creepy to me, especially there's like time travel stuff that's kind of creepy, like in that franchise that does genuinely kind of like make me creeped out because it's
Oh, so like these people in the future are living out the consequences of like something
like
that happened to this photograph in the past or
in
whatever.
Paranormal Activity 4. Like the end of the movie is like the main character is in a house that's like he's like trying to find somebody.
Oh, maybe I had. And there's a lot of people in white or something.
And he's in like the
Maybe
witch
I've seen
house,
that.
the coven house, and he's like running around trying to survive, trying to look for somebody. And then there's like a room that has like a door in it, and there's a door, and on the door there's like runes that are inscribed on the frame. And I guess that's creepy to me because it's like that. If you open that fucking door, that's like a portal into the past. And for some reason, just like the way that they did it, like creeped me out. That was kind of the most frightening aspect of that whole thing was just this concept to me. I don't know why, but so there's stuff that's related to that in Blair Witch, which is the 2016 sequel. There's kind of like similar sort of
Found footage, cult.
There's
stuff.
There's some play
Witchcraft.
with time travel or like missing time or like things like that happening in the movie. But so this brings us to the 2016 movie, which I saw a couple weeks ago in theaters. And I didn't know that we were going to do this podcast, but I just kind of wanted to see it. And, you know, it wasn't, I thought that it was not, some people like didn't like it at all. I thought it was, you know, pretty good. You know, not bad by any means.
Well, from the trailer, it looks like they said, okay, we need to go back to the found footage thing.
Yeah.
The people on the ground are the ones filming.
Yeah.
But let's also apply crazy special effects of their gear flying in the air and doors blowing up and light.
Mm-hmm. All that.
Close encounters.
And it's like, and let's have a script.
Yeah, a strict script with acting and what'd you say?
And pretty people.
Yeah, beautiful people.
And like that, and so it doesn't feel like punk rock or like dangerous at all. Like it doesn't feel like this is a real thing. It totally feels like a Hollywood movie.
A high production.
Yeah. Slick. It feels slick.
And it's all crisp.
Yeah, it's like drones and GoPros and DSLRs.
Slick. You said it.
Yeah.
Slick.
And it is a good movie. Like I think it's well made, but it does not. For me, it doesn't really hold a candle to this film because this is on a different level, you know. And I think that like again, just kind of going back to that thing about like kind of doing something for the first time. There's something about sequels that it seems to me it's like people often take the elements that they're most interested in, but sometimes either aren't interested or tend to not like see the elements or aspects that made the thing really work. Mm-hmm. And I guess like in this film, it's the fact that it really is it's amateurish.
Yeah.
But like that becomes they figure out a way to because like something that we were talking about when we watched this was how good it was, just how good it felt.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
It's a good movie. It's put together really well. It's edited, like the editing is really good in this movie, you know, and so like they embraced the fact that this was shot by people who didn't know how to use cameras, and so eventually that takes on its own logic that like okay, like we have to find the art in how to make all this footage feel good. Feel like something that we want to watch, and so it's like the camera's like looking at the ground or looking at people's like ears, you know, it's like all over the place. But it turns into its own set of like.
It adds to
language,
it because when it is looking at the ground or you're looking at just a pitch black screen.
Yeah.
Your other senses start, right? Your ears start, like, oh, what's going on? Let me hear. Like, bring the camera back. Let me see. And it's adding to the suspense and the emotional, just like overwhelming feeling you're getting of what is happening?
Right.
Why don't I know what's going on? You guys don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
What is this thing in front of your tent? Is this a tooth or is this a finger?
Right.
It's not answering questions.
No.
Right? And I think that's where a lot of horror films go wrong, in my opinion.
Totally.
Is they answer too many questions. They feel like they have to add to your resolve at the end of the movie.
The darkness is what's scary.
Yeah.
The fact that we don't ever that we're not given an answer.
And they know that.
Yeah. Right.
And they embrace it fully.
Yeah.
So
it feels like when people do things for the first time that they have to think about it more because they're inventing their own rules and they have to really figure out like how this is going to work and they're like, this has never been done before. We have to really make sure that we're going to pull this off correctly. And so I feel like that these guys thought about this thing way more than any other iteration of this idea. You know, the first one is like they went all out and made sure that like that it was going to work, you know.
So the Avengers, right, and all Marvel films are made to be sequels.
Yeah.
Every film.
Yeah.
Where I feel like they do it better than other franchises. It's not great all the time.
No.
But where like Pirates of the Caribbean was also made to be a franchise, but it's terrible. It just doesn't work. Pirates, the second movie, in my opinion, there's some cool stuff that happens, but mostly it's garbage. And the way it ends, it's like you're watching TV.
I mean, I don't. I just remember being really confused by this. I saw both those movies. I mean, like I like those. I like Davy Crockett. You know, like his CG looks awesome. Like
Davy Crockett.
Davy Jones.
Like we're talking about the same movie.
Yeah, Davy Jones.
Yeah, no, CG's cool. Like there's some cool stuff.
But,
I agree.
Yeah, but like this is a totally different topic.
The point should Blair Witch be a franchise?
No, I don't think it necessarily needs to be. You know, like I think do most like Pirates of the Caribbean is a trilogy. You know, in the Marvel universe and Star Wars, like these are like planned.
Well, Pirates of the Caribbean is 4 movies. They're coming out with 5 now.
Yeah, I mean, right, and so that so this is a movie where it's kind of like a different. It's almost a different category when you have a film that had no plans on being a sequel, on being a franchise, and then like they start making stuff after the fact. But kind of going back to your statement about just kind of about the mystery and not answering questions, I feel like that's kind of sometimes it is kind of a bummer, I think, when sequels are made, because like this is a perfect example of that where like the fact like just 2016, the age of content, you know, like we can't erase the fact that there's a Blair Witch or Blair Witch 2 Book of Shadows. And I think that while those movies may have their fans and there may be cool stuff in those movies, you know, that like, and if we were to sit down and watch them, we could probably have a good time, you know, like not really have a bad time or anything. But it would also be cool if there was only ever the Blair Witch Project.
Yeah.
And there was no other media beyond like what came out when this film existed. So, because it's kind of like now anytime you type in Blair Witch Project, you don't go back to this movie. You see like a bunch of other information, a bunch of other content that is kind of like watered down versions of the original idea.
Yeah.
This is the source material. This is kind of where it all came from. And this is like the most potent, powerful version of this concept. And I don't think it needs a sequel. You know, I think that the reason why it's horrifying, the reason that it works is that the camera goes down at the very end and you don't see what happens. You don't you're expecting to see somebody's foot, something in the frame, and you don't see anything, and that's what sticks with you.
Besides the first movie, this is a terrible franchise.
Yeah, and again, like I didn't mind this.
The third one.
The third one. It was like, you know, it wasn't like. It was well made.
Terrible meaning. There's no reason for a franchise to exist.
I don't think so. I didn't think so. you know, like obviously that there's it's a different time now, and in the third one they obviously have stuff with like technology and GPS and drones and kind of like integrating that stuff into the storyline, but I don't know if that was worth it for me.
Well, real quick,
Yeah.
do you think that this type of movie, because something that is unsettling about the whole movie the entire time is like the film grainy look of these older cameras adding to there's just something about it, just something about this old grain footage from found in a forest that's adding to the overall suspense and scary factor of the movie. Do you think
and
that
in the beauty of it,
and the beauty of it,
like
yeah, the 16 footage is
it's awesome,
is beautiful,
yeah,
absolutely. Do you think that this can be done on HD? I mean, you saw it on HD, and it was like this effort to add all this like new technology into the Blair Witch Project.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's kind of like that thing about sequels. Sometimes it's like, man, like why would you try it? Like Total Recall. Like I was watching Total Recall last night.
The sequel or the original?
The original.
Or not sequel, but the remake.
The remake, and that's a movie that I would love to watch. Like that's a good thing as part of this series. But it's like that first movie, 1990 version, the Paul Verhoeven Schwarzenegger version, is fucking awesome.
Yeah, it's a really good movie.
It's a really good movie. And again, like that and RoboCop, which is also another Verhoeven movie that was remade.
Yeah.
It's like, why? Like, first off, it's like, why are you remaking good movies?
Yeah.
Like Soderbergh.
Because they can, because money.
Yeah, because they can. But Steven Soderbergh says this thing. It's like, why go through the trouble of remaking something that like worked, or instead of what you could be doing is remaking something that maybe was a good idea that wasn't executed as well as it could have been, because then you have the opportunity to kind of actually do it right, versus like
repainting the Mona Lisa
over
and over and over.
Because
like Spider-Man.
Because if it worked the first time, and if it was great the first time, then you are in a losing battle. You will never surpass the magic of the original, especially if like. I just don't understand. Like, we have a lot of respect for the original film, and like, know that the film has a lot of fans, and we just want to do right. It's like, what are you guys doing? It's like, what, like, how do you expect to do anything if you're kind of hampered by the past and expectations, or like it just seems like a very strange decision to make remakes or sequels to things that already worked.
Yeah.
And this is definitely an example of that, where it's like, maybe it was unnecessary, but probably, the new film definitely did have a claustrophobic scene where you're like in a tunnel, and like you're like crawling through and you're stuck, and it
sounds terrible.
And that was bad. Like
that sounds. I mean, terrible as in like really scary, and I don't want to be a part of that.
Yeah, I don't like that stuff. But yeah, I think that I just think that's kind of the rule for me, is like, if a film is great, then it's going to be a bad decision to remake it.
Or continue on with a franchise that doesn't need to exist.
Yeah. Just
for money's sake.
Yeah.
So anyway, Blair Witch Project, great movie, totally holds up.
Great movie.
I love watching it during the Halloween season. I'm glad we watched it. I'm glad we did a podcast on it. It was totally worth the detour.
Totally.
To celebrate Halloween.
Yeah.
Happy Halloween, everybody.
Happy Halloween, guys.
Thanks for listening to our second podcast, but not Star Wars, which will be our next one.
Yeah.
A New Hope, which we're still pumped about. So anyway, thanks for listening, everyone, and happy Halloween, and we'll catch you next time.
All right. Good talk.